Hello, my name is Jules, and today I'm going to be showing you how I set up my reading journal. And I'm using this as a reading bullet journal. All of these inserts I made myself, and I'm showing them to you now because it sounds like the right thing to do. I had this really pretty pack of paper that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I loved the colors, so I just made some inserts with some Strathmore writing paper on the inside. I printed some dot grid paper and it turned out really good. I also made this bookmark that I am putting inside so that way I don't have to constantly be rewriting what my TBR list is or what different things I should try. I still have a page specifically for different books to try, but the main focus for that bookmark is not having to write the TBR list. I am a very casual reader, but I still wanted to make a reading journal because it's helpful to keep certain things separated. As I'm doing this, you might be looking at it and saying, hey, it's already set up. What are you doing? I used erasable ink so that way I could set things up and not have to spend a bunch of time erasing and wiping away eraser dust. The color I'm setting this up in is Noodler's Beaver, and it's a really nice, warm, toasty brown. It just is very comforting. So I wanted to do brown because it's really soft and it's not as harsh as black. I have learned that recently you can make yourself little cutouts and paste them into your notebook, and so that's what I'm going to be doing for the future log. And at the time of recording this video, recording the voiceover, I have finished the future log and added the months. I'm starting in October because that is the month that I'm starting this notebook in, so my year is starting in October rather than January. I think being a perfectionist about things like that is a little bit wasteful and results in unneeded waste. So I am not going to be a perfectionist. I'm just going to start as I am right now, which is in October. I ended up splitting the year into trimesters. So there are 4 months per page and there are 3 pages. The only downside is that with trimesters, I end up thinking of pregnancy and I am not pregnant. I'm planning on using my future log as a place to put the books that I've read for that month and it being all very self-contained in that way, but you could still see it in the year. I think that is a good use of space in my opinion, so that is what I'm using it for. The pen itself, I cannot remember what it's called, but I also got it off of Amazon and it holds so much ink. Like, I have little ink droppers to fill up my fountain pens, and this takes like 3 or 4, so this is gonna last me quite some time. When I'm done with this beaver color, I might switch over to a blue because I have quite a few different blue inks and I really love the color blue. Or I'll try a different ink that I already have because I ended up being a little bit of a collector of inks and things like notebooks and stuff like that. And I want to actually start using them rather than just collecting and having a little dragon hoard of objects. Speaking of dragons, the red of this notebook reminds me of Bilbo's dragon. It wasn't a dragon book, but it was Bilbo's book, which was described as being like a red notebook. And I feel like this fits being a reading book. I didn't like The Hobbit when I first read it because I was in middle school and I was forced to read it over the summer, but I've been reading Lord of the Rings lately and I actually kind of enjoy it. There are a couple of parts that are a bit annoying to me because of just the way Tolkien writes, where he has to have lots of exposition, but I don't mind it so far. It's very beautifully written and you can tell he has a lot of passion for what he was writing. I've been listening to the version that Andy Serkis narrated, and he's very good at impressions, so he's been doing impressions of all of the different actors that play those roles, and it feels a bit like watching an even longer extended version of the movies, so I'm enjoying it. I've never read them before, and I'm just having a good time. I do want to give you a little bit of a forewarning that the end of the video is going to be a little bit shaky. That's because I wanted to show the erasable ink being erased, and I had a heat gun downstairs, so I had to hold the camera while I was erasing the previous blue lines. This is my first reading journal, so I tried to keep everything very functional and simple because lots of things happening in a notebook makes me feel anxious, so I would rather keep things very simple so that way I actually use it. I have the same kind of philosophy for my bullet journal, although lately in my bullet journaling I have been trying to experiment with adding paper from like paper packs rather than just leaving it white, although I really like the clean look, so I will definitely be sticking to that. But just different ways to see how different types of paper can still be useful. I don't need notebooks that look super pretty, just as long as they're useful. I think that's the most important thing to me. But I do know one thing for sure. If I did need to do another future log again, I would make a printable version of it so that way I could just stick it in my notebook. Eventually, it would be really nice to make my own notebooks and like have them bound and everything, but I don't think that's the plan at the moment. I want my processes to be very smooth and to have a really good understanding of what I'm doing before I went ahead and did that. In some cases, jumping in head first is a good idea, but in others, I think it's better to do a little bit of research beforehand and really test things out and see how it's going to work. For example, if I were doing a future log in a bullet journal, I would use the future log to mark off birthdays or important days, like when to pay my bills or when to pay off my credit card, things like that. I don't think I would use the future log for really big anything that is pretty small. Pardon me. I'm having tea while I do this voiceover, so it's very chill, and I feel very chill. The tea I'm drinking, if you happen to be curious, is nettle tea, and it's supposed to be really good for anti-inflammatory and also balancing hormones and other things like that. It kind of tastes like grass, but I don't mind grass-flavored teas. So that's it for the future log. The next page is going to be a reflection page where I am reflecting on how I think this bullet journal went and how I would go about changing it in the future. So if I were to make another one, how would I change it? How would I make it better? Those are the types of things that I try to critique for when I'm critiquing my own work. Not just in bullet journaling, but in art and other things like that. Next, I have a things to check out page, and this I am considering. So if someone were to give me a recommendation and I didn't know them very well, then I could research the book itself, if it's a book, because this is a reading bullet journal. Then I could research the book and see if it would be something that would be up my alley, and if it's not, then I can just leave it in that page and say that I wrote it down. If you do happen to have any suggestions for books, I would love to hear them. I was going to put something where it says reading log T1, T1 meaning trimester 1, but I cannot remember. So I put it on the second page so that way I would remember. But I still don't remember what I was going to have that second page be. Usually I would cross it out and write the correct thing, but I didn't this time because I thought very arrogantly that I would be able to remember what it was supposed to be. So what the reading log is actually going to look like, because I just skipped ahead, is it's going to have 3 columns, one for the date, one for the title and author, and then the third one is going to be for the amount of time spent reading or the amount of time or the amount of books. So that's what that's going to be for. And this is going to be the book reviews page. I'm planning on either coloring the book covers in a pixel kind of art style, or I was going to print out book covers and stick them in here so that way I wouldn't have to worry so much. I saw somebody else do this kind of setup on YouTube and I really loved it, so I wanted to do something very simple like that. I can't remember who actually did it, but it was very inspiring, so I borrowed it. I am so very grateful that fountain pen ink exists that is erasable, or at least heat erasable. It's so cool. I love the idea of being able to sketch things out and still erase it without having to worry about what is it called, like eraser shavings, and having to wrinkle the page because you accidentally erased too hard. That happened to me today when I was erasing some spreads that I didn't want for my bullet journal. And then having a line to divide the book cover and the book information, pardon me, from the rest of the content. So that's it for this, and all of the spreads after this one are probably going to look very similar. I will set up the next trimester with you and show you what that is going to look like, because I am more than likely going to change some things about it. And then we're going to label the tags on some of my other notebooks. This one I was going to label nonfiction notes, because I like to take notes on books that are nonfiction, and I find that really helpful. I don't really take notes on fiction books, and I know I'm not the only one that doesn't. But the main reason is because I like to just enjoy the nonfiction and ponder it myself rather than sitting down and writing it every so often. But with nonfiction, I feel like there's a lot more to get out of it, so I definitely want to take notes and make sure I'm getting what I can out of it. So now I'm labeling the tags that I have on the notebooks. Some of these turned out very janky. It was just the first two that I made because I did it wrong. I didn't know, but now I do, that when you're going to make your own inserts, you have to cut the pretty paper that you're going to use as the cover. You have to cut that down to the size of the paper that you printed. So I used US letter size, which is 8.5 by 11, and I learned now that you have to cut down the 12 by 12 paper to fit that. So when I first made those first notebooks, I didn't do that. I folded the 8.5 by 11 paper that I had already printed with dot grid, and I put the 12 by 12 paper around it, and that made all of my cuts for the inserts completely off, and it didn't work very well. That's why the cover is a little bit too long, and the paper on the inside looks like it was put in crooked, and that it just has little jagged edges. But I like to think if it were perfect, then it couldn't possibly be mine. So that's usually my philosophy with things. Or on the other side of that, it's beautifully imperfect, or it's just like mistakes make it mine, or something like that. I can't think of the exact turn of phrase that I typically use when having situations like these, and I'm just adjusting the layout of the pages, of the books in my traveler's notebook. I'm using a notebook color that is discontinued from Chic Sparrow, and it's this really gorgeous red. I don't know how that texture got on there, but it is beautiful. I think the leather just took the dye differently. And here's the part that I was talking about where I'm showing the original things getting erased, and it looks really satisfying to me, even though it's very handheld and it's not perfect. Please don't mind the mess. It's an art studio. There's lots of little bits and bobs and things going on in there. I don't think anything in life is completely perfect. Anybody that says it is they're trying to sell you something, probably. But yeah, I go through all of the pages and erase the little bits. And this part is really subtle because I only use little dots of blue, but you can still kind of see it going away. And then that is for those two pages of the future log. And then this last one too, I'm going to go through and erase. And yes, it is very wobbly. I hope you don't get seasick. I hope you have your sea legs and all of that, so that way you don't get any motion sickness. And then for the next one, we have the reflection page, which I think still turned out okay. The N in reflection looks like it's a little awkward, but it's alright. I think that's usable. And then the next page is stuff to check out. Like I said, if you do have any book recommendations to check out, I would love to add them to the list and check them out. I'm going to a book sale this weekend. There's a 25-cent book sale in my area at a used book area. How many times did I just say area? But there's a used book sale, and I'm really excited because I like buying books, and I'd like to get into reading them more. So that's also the purpose of this notebook, to help me track what I'm reading and also make sure that I am reading. It's just practical, in my opinion. That's pretty much all I have for this video. It might end a little bit abruptly, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Next time I'm going to be, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to be doing something back in my bullet journal. I think I'm going to be showing you how I make tape-ins, and so you can see that whole process, and it'll be really fun. I'll see you later. Bye bye.